Okay, so because this is the week before Pesach, we're doing hybrid Mishlei Pesach stuff, and I'm gonna do something which is very not like me. I'm gonna bias your thinking. Okay, I'm gonna prejudice your thinking before we start learning the pasuk. Okay, so the plan is gonna be like this: is I'm gonna plant a seed of thought in your head. Okay, then we're gonna put it aside and then do Mishlei like we usually do, with the hopes of understanding the pasuk, but then with the prejudice in your head, and then we're going to visit the thing that we were prejudiced about and hope to get insight for Pesach. Okay, so the thing that I'm gonna bias you with is this halacha here. Okay, so this is in the Rambam, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this halacha before, or at least have heard of it. Okay, so the Rambam says in Hilchos Chametz Umatza, 7th chapter, second halacha. Mitzvah lahodia labanim. So there's background here. So there's the main mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, where you have to tell the story of the Exodus. But then there's a sub mitzvah within that if you have a son, and that's what the Rambam is talking about now. Mitzvah lahodia labanim afilu lo shalo. So it's a mitzvah to inform or to teach your children, your sons, even if they don't ask. Shneimar, as it says, v'higadat lebenecha, you should tell your son. Okay, and then here's the halacha. Lefi dato shel ben aviv malamdo. In accordance with the son's mind, the father teaches him. Okay, and the reason why it's father and son and not parent and child is because this is a special extension of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of teaching and learning Torah, which is in this form only on fathers to sons. Obviously, women have to learn and teach Torah for other reasons, but not as part of passing on the Masorah. That's the male responsibility. So that's why it's fathers and sons. Okay, so how does it work? So the father teaches it in accordance with the son's mind. Ketzad, how so? If your son is young or foolish, okay, what do you want to say? You know, it's funny because our Haggadah says ben tam, which I feel like is a much more politically correct term, a simple son. But the Talmud Yerushalmi says tipesh, is if you got an idiot son, foolish son, then that's what you do. So use whichever term you feel comfortable with. Omer lo, so then you say to him, Bani, my son, all of us were slaves like this maidservant or that servant in Egypt. And this night, and tonight, God redeemed us and we went out to freedom. So that's if the son is young or foolish. But if your son is gadol, which again, I don't know if that means older or mature, and he's wise, then you inform him of the miracles that happened to us in Egypt. So you inform him of what happened to us in Egypt and the miracles that were done through Moshe Rabbeinu, all according to the mind of the son. And side question here, if you're wondering about why he doesn't mention Moshe Rabbeinu for the foolish son, or he doesn't even mention the miracles for the foolish son, Rabbi Bald gave a shiur in Yeshiva this Sunday, which I just finished listening to, where he addresses that. So if you're interested, then you can listen to that. Okay, so that is that's the halacha. Okay. And those are obviously just two examples, but there's a lot more sons than that. And where do we see this play out in the Haggadah itself? Basic question.
The four sons.
The four sons. Okay, right. So we're not going to read through the four sons now because I feel like we're all familiar on a basic level. But I want to read the first part. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, blessed is the true existence, blessed is he. Baruch Shenas and Torah Yisrael Baruch Hu, blessed is the one who gave the Torah to his people Israel, blessed is he. Keneged Arbaah Banim Divrei Torah, the Torah spoke corresponding to four children, four sons. Echad Chacham Rasha Echad Tam Echad She'eno Yodei Lishol, one wise, one wicked, one simple, and one who doesn't know to ask. And then it goes through the four sons and the questions and the answers, so that we're familiar with. Okay, so that's the thing I'm planting in your head. Okay, any questions before we put this on the back burner? Because we're going to put it on the back burner and not revisit it until after we do the Mishlei pasuk. Okay, so let's put this on the back burner. We're going to go to Mishlei pasuk, and I'm going to warn you now, the Mishlei pasuk is one that is overly quoted, okay? And that the challenge is, if you're not familiar with the pasuk, then you'll be at the advantage because you'll be able to think about it fresh. But I feel like people who have heard this pasuk before are going to automatically have ideas, and this is the challenge here is we got to try to approach it fresh. Okay, so here is the pasuk. Dun, dun, dun. Hanoch lena'ar al pi darko v'gam ki yazkin lo yasur mimena. Okay, so I'm not going to do a survey as to who has heard this pasuk before, but if you have, then let's try to approach it fresh. Okay, so how are we translating this? Who wants to take the leap?
I could do it.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so I think it's educate a youth like according to his way, right? Like his
Yep.
path. And like, and even in his like older years, he won't turn away from it. He won't.
Okay, good. So
remove
let's
it,
say
yeah.
even when he grows old, he will not turn away from it. Okay, good. Perfect translation. I do want to point out a few nuances. Okay, but that's totally fine. So first of all, I like how you said way or path, because those are two different acceptable translations here. Okay, chanoch. All right. So chanoch is a weird word because you said educate, and I think that's how we use it. We use it in terms of chinuch, but how else is chinuch translated? What would be, actually, before I ask that, what would be the standard verb that you would expect to use? Like, what would be the standard root that you would expect to use if you're talking about teaching someone?
Like loamed?
Yeah, lamed, right? So to teach, okay? But chanoch is a different word. So what are some other translations of chanoch?
Is it like a mechanic?
Education.
Someone say that again. I didn't hear. I couldn't hear what people said.
So I said education.
Education, yeah, fine. So, but I'm saying if you have something other than educate, what would be another translation?
Maybe to guide someone.
Okay, guide, yeah. I'm looking for
Instruct.
radically different translations. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Okay, there's a holiday named after this.
Like Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, right? So what do we mean? Hanukkah is not the education holiday, right? So what does Hanukkah mean?
That is a pretty good question.
Inaugurate.
Inaugurate, okay, right. So educate or inaugurate, okay? So look at the Mitzudas ציון here, okay? That's how he translates it. He says, chino or chanoch, he says, hu inyan haschala ledavar she'asid la'amod bo. Chinuch is I'll type it in here. So this concept is the beginning or initiation of something which he will be in, which she'asid la'amod bo, that I'm going to use an awkward. He will be in the future. Okay, I know that's not the best way to say it. Kumo, and then he gives a pasuk. Okay, this is from the Tochacha. Oh, sorry, not the Tochacha. This is from the Meshuach Nechama, who's the guy who is appointed to, before the war, the Kohen who's appointed to announce to everyone basically like all the people who are exempt from going to war. So one of the people he says is Mi ha'ish asher bana bais chadash v'lo chanacho. Who is the man who built a new house and he didn't chanacho? Now, chanacho clearly doesn't mean who built a new house and didn't teach it or didn't educate it. It means who didn't inaugurate it, okay, or like start using it. All right. Same thing in the Beis Hamikdash. Every time you build a new kli of the Beis Hamikdash, a new vessel, you have to do an inauguration on it. Okay, and there's a special way you inaugurate every kli. Okay, so I'm saying as it is said. Who is the man who built a new house and did not inaugurate it? Okay, so that's what I mean by another like radically different translation here. Okay, so educate or inaugurate are the two translations. And again, Metzudas ציון is firmly planted on the inaugurate side from the pasuk he brings. Okay, so any questions on just that translation there? I think that's the only ambiguity.
Can you explain inaugurate a little more? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so like if you have a new building, like is there another term that I'm thinking of with inaugurate, like when they make a new school or a new like opening ceremonies? Is there a verb they use there?
Yeah.
I was thinking like dedicate.
Yeah, dedicate is another good word for it, right? Dedication. So it's when you first use the thing and you initiate it into the process that it's going to be serving for the long run. So we'd obviously have to figure out what that means about the youth, but that's what the word means, is to inaugurate.
Wait, I have a question. Do we have to translate? Do we have to pick one, or like are they mutually exclusive?
It's a good question. I mean, you could say that it's talking about education, but it's talking about education that takes place at an early phase, So for example, like you look at Sadyagon here, Okay, and Sadion is going to kind of also bias us, but since we're already in a bias mode, then, and that was not a pun on the pasuk that he quoted bias, but okay. Chanoch es hanar lefi erech gilo. So Sadion says, educate the youth according to the level of his age, okay, or the value of his age, literally. The quality of his age, I think is probably better. The quality of his age. So that when he grows old, he will not deviate from that education. Okay, so he's learning it as educate, but you see he's doing it in terms of like an age appropriate thing, which means that like it's not talking about one method of education that lasts forever. It's talking about like at each age you start him off in the thing that's appropriate to him, you know? So like there is, so to answer your question, Rifki, there could be a combo thing here, you know, between educate and inaugurate. But the reason why I'm talking about inaugurate here is I do think like, if I asked you like, what is the most common word for teach, it would be melamed. And I also think that we've seen a lot of pasukim in Mishlei that talk about disciplining and giving rebuke. You know, there's lots of instruction, commandments. There's a lot of other verbs that it could use. So the fact that it uses this weird word of inaugurate, to me, implies that it's trying to say something beyond just educate. Okay. And then Targum, I put here in
Can I
case.
point out that I
Yeah.
feel like that might stray a little bit from your normal line of questioning?
Yes, you can point that out. Yeah. Yeah. In fairness, in defense of myself, I will say that what do you call it? That most times in this weekly shiur that's come up has been when we've seen two terms that are used in the same pasuk that are like synonyms, like tongue and lips, you know, or something like that. And there I'm less inclined. There I'm within the same pasuk, I'm comfortable saying it's just using a synonym. But you're right, that is that is not my usual thing. And I think the reason why I went there is because, you know, usually we do look at the Mitzudos, and I did find it weird that he did not just take this as educate, you know, he took it as inaugurate or something like that. Okay, Targum I put here in case anyone sees another idea, but I don't quite get how he's translating it. So if anyone knows Aramaic more than I do, Adrucha Latalia Likvel Orche. So I think that's just a literal translation. Guide. He says guide actually, so that's important. Guide the youth corresponding to his way. The lokad nisuv nistemine. I think that means or else when he's old, he will deviate from it. I think he just changes it to or else. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this to save space because I don't see anything new from that. And then we got our English here. Train the youth according to his way. Even when he grows old, he will not swerve from it. Okay, fine. Educate the youngster according to his way so that even when he grows old, he will not veer from it. Train up a lad in the way he should go. When he grows old, he will not swerve from it. I think these are sufficiently the same that we can delete this and just stick with ours.
I don't know. I mean, guiding someone and educating someone can be two different things. They're not.
You mean training?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So we'll just add the word train and then we'll delete them. Yeah.
Do you think that inaugurate also implies a newness, something new?
Yeah.
Like when you, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So that allows for change and adjustment, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. All right, so let's get the questions out though, like we usually do. So so obviously one question is, what does chanoch mean? Okay, so does it mean educate, train, inaugurate, and what is the definition in this context? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If inaugurate or whatever word we decide to use implies like something new, then I don't really understand how it could be according to his way or like his path, because that implies something already there.
Okay, good. So let's actually just split that into two questions here. Okay, so let's say, what does darko, his way, mean? And then what does chanoch al pi darko mean? In other words, oops. Oh, I put this here as a reminder for myself. Look how good this reminder is. Okay, this is kind of obvious, but next week we're not having shiur. So the next shiur is scheduled for April 5th, which is the Monday after we get back. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Does that work? Hold on. No, this is false. This is a lie. Wait a minute. I gotta check the dates here. No, I'm flying out on that Monday. So the next year is going to be okay. All right. I knew something was weird here. The 12th. Okay. So the next year will be on the 12th, the next scheduled year. Okay. Unless I get really good Wi-Fi on the plane and it doesn't bother anyone for me to give here, but I'm not going to count on that. Okay. So what did Alpi Darko mean in other, especially with, so I'm going to add the first question, especially if it means inaugurate, then how do we reconcile inaugurate, which implies a new beginning, with his way, which implies something already there? Is that your question, Shifra?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
I would say, sorry, can you go back? Yeah, I would say like, what is mimena? Because if you go with the idea that he's educating him based on his age, then mimena is not one thing. It's
Okay,
constantly,
good.
you know.
Oh, okay. So this is an ambiguity in general. So let's actually, before I write down the question, okay, he will not depart from it. Okay. So what do you think the it is? So Sarah, you just mentioned one possibility. Just say it again. What might the it refer to?
Well, I was saying like going based off of the idea that it's going based off his age. It can't be like if you go with that, it can't be one thing. So maybe I would assume like Torah, like in the lifestyle of Torah, that's like the basic generic guess.
Okay. What about just structurally in the sentence? What would the it? What's the?
It would probably be his method of learning then.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So that's one possibility.
Can it be new information that he didn't have before his inauguration began?
Well, I'm just asking from a simple grammatic perspective. So
It's either either the education or the path.
Okay, good. So it's either the education or the path. Okay, good. So let me just type that out and then we'll spell out the details. So when it says he will not deviate from it, okay, what is the it? Okay, so the two grammatically sound interpretations are, is it his path or is it the education / inauguration? Okay, and grammatically I would have said that it's ambiguous because mimena is feminine and derech is masculine, unless there's some weird form of derech I don't know about, and so is chinuch. But I've seen Mefarshim say it both ways. So for example, look at Sadigon. Okay, Sadigon is explicitly addressing that question. You see how he plugs in the word education at the end. He says, educate the youth according to the quality of his age, so that when he grows old, he will not deviate from that education. So he's taking a stance on that, but there are others who take it otherwise. Okay, so the question is, so is it he will not deviate from it? Is it his path, or is it is it the education? Okay.
Is path a process and the education the data?
That's possible. Let's hold off on giving answers until we list all the questions.
Oh, that was a question.
Oh, it was a question. Okay, yeah. All right. Hold on a second here. Yeah, what was someone else had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, going back one step, why are we translating way path? Can we also translate it?
I think you got cut off. Can we also translate it as what? Okay, I can't hear you if you're talking. All right. Who else had a question?
No, sorry, I got this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I got disconnected. I'm back. I just want to know, can we also translate the way or path as predisposition?
Position? No.
Is that the same thing?
I don't think so, because I think
predisposition. Like
He said predisposition.
Oh, predisposition. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be an interpretation though of way or path. But I mean, the translation is going to be one of those, and then that would be a figurative. It'd be not figured. I don't mean like non-literal. I mean like like you have a certain derech.
Okay.
That'd be an interpretation. Yeah, yeah. So that's definitely a possibility. Who else had a question?
Can you also ask if it's true? Does it?
Yes. Okay. Good. Okay, and then that question is more relevant than you think. Okay.
Yeah, it's doesn't seem like it's in all cases.
Yeah, meaning does this always work? Yeah, and if not, what are the parameters? Okay, good.
I also had a question. I think it might have been asked already. I don't even know at this point, so I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask on the type of training, like
Yeah.
what I might be on the first question. What type of training is this that it would last? Like, I feel like that's like very, very specific type of training that I would be speaking about. And also, I guess kind of similar to Ariel's question, like, is there even a type of training which does that? I mean, obviously, like we think Torah does that, but you see people go up the derech all the
Right.
time.
Right.
So,
So the question would be like this. So I guess we'll ask this. Okay. What does chinuch mean? Like, what does it really mean? Okay. Meaning in particular. All right. Meaning like it's not going to be enough. I think because this is a practical. I mean, obviously all pasuk in the Mishlei are practical, but I think we're going to demand a very particularized definition of this, or at least a concrete examples. Instead of just like an abstract thing, in order to be able to, to assess whether this is true. Okay, what else?
For Sadia Gaon, oh, sorry. For Sadia Gaon, the quality of his age,
Yeah.
I'm trying to reconcile quality of his age with when he grows old. It seems like they're talking about, I don't know. And bear in mind that all of my answers are questions.
Okay. So I think the question, let's just ask this question here, okay, which is, what is it adding by even when he grows old? Okay, so I'm gonna make an inference here, and you tell me if you think that this makes sense. Okay, there seems to be educate the youth according to his way, which seems to imply that that's going to do something good, but then beyond doing something good, even when he's old, then he won't deviate from it. Meaning, this is the fact that it uses the word also implies that this is like a above and beyond like some other basic result. So maybe we could just ask that. Okay, let's just, what is being added, emphasized, or added by the even when he grows old? Okay, in other words, why would we think that this would not last into his old age? Or what other methods wouldn't last into his old age? Yeah.
Oh, so how old is old?
Yes. Okay, good. So let's ask Bill this question. How young, what is the definition of na'ar, youth, in this context? Okay. Is it and zaken, old, in this, yeah. Okay, in this context. Okay, because for example, we know that in Torah, zaken does not necessarily mean someone who's old in years. It could mean someone who is wise. Okay, so is this specifically applying to youth and old age, or is this something else? And then again, what are the parameters? Okay, meaning how young is young and how old is old?
could we just interpret the even as just trying to tell us what type of education this is? Or is that like a bad methodology?
So this is why I'm not inclined to say that, because maybe you can work this in also, but here's what my point I was making. Hold on, because if you just took out the word even, you could say like this: educate the youth according to his way, because when he grows old, he will not deviate from it. And that would be giving a reason, right? Teach him according to his way, since he will not deviate from it even when he gets old. But the even implies that some sort of chiddush or some sort of like beyond the thing, So that's why I'm saying that, like, apparently there are some forms of education that don't even work, other ones that work, but they don't last into old age. And then this is saying if you educate him according to his way, it will last into his old age.
So are you saying more related to his way than the education?
Well, it's education according to his way. We're talking about one method of education here.
True. I have to think about it more. Yeah.
Yeah.
These might be like, I don't know, non-strong questions, but just to be more analytical, like what is his way, how do you determine his way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll add that to here. What does his way mean? How do you determine it?
Can I add on to that? Does the Darko, does it have to be referring to the Na'ar, or can it be the person giving the education?
Oh, okay. Good question. Okay. So whose way? Okay. Did I ever find someone who said this? I feel like it would be very easy for one of the commentators to say it's not with a lowercase h, it's with a capital H. Okay, most of the Mepharshim didn't say that, like according to the way of Hashem, plain pshat is it's talking about the na'ar, and this is even addressing Mayan's question because the na'ar is the only subject of the pasuk. So
What about the person it's talking to, like instructing?
That would be according to your way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely either according to the na'ar's way or according to God's way. I think it's one or the other, and I think it's gonna make sense. It's the na'ar. Good question though.
Also, why is it specific to the nar?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to add that here. Okay. Even though it's not, there could be another question. But the reason why is because this is part of the question. What are the parameters? Why is this? Or sorry, is this specific to the nar? Is this specific to the na'ar? And if so, why? Meaning, it could be that this is the best way to educate a nar, but it's also the best way to educate anyone. Or it could be no, this is specifically for the nar.
And also, can a nar have more than one way, either consecutively or at the same time?
Yeah. Okay. So what does it mean? How do you determine it? Whose way? So I'm gonna. All right. Whose way? Does each na'ar only have one way, or can there be many ways? And that's going to depend on how we define it. Like, for example, well, I guess even according to Sadiq own, according to his age. So like if you're talking about, let's say, physical ability and mental ability, those are two different ways which both exist within one age, and like you'd have to educate according to, if you're teaching him sports, you'd have to educate according to his physical abilities. And if you're teaching him like math, you'd have to do it according to his,
right. Ability. But I mean, even if you looked at it as one, meaning there's two questions. The way you just said it, there's two ways at one time. Right. But even if you said there's one way at a time, if it's according to his age, then every time his age changes, you're adjusting the way.
Okay, right. So
versus
I guess that's
if you say it's someone's inherent archetype, let's say, then that would stay the same their whole life.
Okay, so let's say many ways. Does his way change, or is it like intrinsic or static? Yeah.
Also, does this mean the opposite true? Like if you educate somebody either, let's say in a group collectively, not as an individual, but that like, is it implying that it would have the opposite effects?
Okay.
That it would
okay, good question.
Cause them to turn away or, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So I'm actually going to ask a prior question to that and then add your question. What is the opposite? Okay, meaning, because you mentioned an opposite so you said, is it teaching according to the group as opposed to the individual? Okay, or what would be and then we Mayan also mentioned an opposite. Is it teaching according to the educator's way as opposed to the youth's way? Okay, and then the question is, and what would be the effect if you did the opposite? That's a really important question, right? Because this pasuk is not speaking in opposites, so this is one of the ones where we have to infer the opposite. Okay, so I just want to point out. Oh yeah, sorry. Any other questions?
Yeah, but my question's really annoying. But I'm just gonna.
Okay, that's fine. Annoying questions can be good.
Hey, I think. Wait, can you scroll down to the questions for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, I think my question maybe is rooted in question 2.
Yeah.
But I just don't really see how this pasuk is a good thing. Like, it sounds kind of scary. Like, why would you want to stick to one derech like your whole life?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So so let me I'm gonna actually group that. I feel like it should be grouped under number 5. Okay. Is this true? Is this even good? Okay. And the reason why I'm putting it there is because question 5 is questioning like the logic of the pasuk, so I feel like it's more appropriate there, whereas question 2 is questioning the meaning of the pasuk. This is questioning like the value or the truth of the pasuk. Yeah, good question. You're more on target than you think in terms of like questioning this. We'll see. I don't want to prejudice you yet, but let's just say our good old friend Shadal adds an Italian word that's going to be what you say to express this. Okay, but we won't look there yet. Okay, I think we have.
I have something to add to what she was saying. So I guess like, yeah, if it could be a bad thing, then this could be like a cautionary tale. Like if you don't do a good job educating, it could have negative consequences on the student.
Yes. Okay, good. So yeah, let us add that. Let's add that here. Okay, hold on a second here. Wait, where did I add this? Oh yeah. Couldn't the consequences be harmful? Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else before we move to thinking?
Yeah. Who's the audience?
So this one, the audience is, so we know generally who the audience is, okay? But right, like who's the general audience?
This could either be the educator or the individual being educated.
Okay, I mean, I think it's pretty clear it is the educator because it's telling him to educate according to the youth. You know, so we know the general audience, but the question is who's the specific audience? Meaning,
I'm going to disagree with that because
okay, go ahead.
I think that this is just dependent on how you define what a nar is. According to the way I'm already trying to define it, I think that being I guess it's going to get into the answer stage, but I don't know how to say.
Well, let me just to clarify my meaning here. The applications can be wide ranging. He's talking to someone who's educating because he's telling him how to educate. It's literally a command saying educate. You know, so I'm open to the question of you know, is it a parent, a teacher, a coach, right? A guy, you know, but it is someone who is in the position to either educate or not educate, or to educate in one way or not in another way.
Can you just add a student down there also? It'll make me feel good.
Okay.
Can you generalize it to some sort of authority? Like
authority, yeah, right. Any authority?
Another kind of question is, so we've mentioned this now a couple times, the idea you and your Chavrusa mentioned about the audience being people who want to kind of direct and guide their emotions and thoughts towards better behaviors.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is what emotion exactly are they guiding, or what thought process are they guiding to new behavior?
Okay, that's actually really good here, which is I feel like you can't talk about education without having some sort of end goal or values or like something.
Right. And like, what was the tendency that we're trying to avoid? Meaning like,
yeah.
So
I'm going to put this in as a separate question up here. Okay. What is the end / goal / objective of this type of chinuch? Okay. Like, how is its success or failure measured?
In other words, like, what's the message of this pasuk?
So that's another question, which is, what is the point of this pasuk? I mean, you would think it's to tell you how to educate, but like, actually, no, you're right. Yeah, I guess that could go up there. Yeah, meaning, what are we trying to do here? Yeah. Okay. I think this would be a good time to think about the questions because we're at about a little bit before the halfway point. I just want to, okay, this is too big to fit on one thing. Wait, can I change the layout here? Hold on. And you know what? Now that we know the Metzudas Tion, let's get rid of him.
Does turning it to like landscape do anything?
That's what I just did. Is it not? Did it not change on yours?
No.
Okay. I just want to point out one thing though, is that, you know, my worry did not come to fruition here. My worry was that since this is a very frequently quoted pasuk, then like everyone would just like, you know, have a hard time like seeing through new stuff. But I think it's pretty clear that there's like a lot of stuff we have to figure out here, right? And I think it's also clear that if you're ever in an educational setting, whether it's a school or like an educational conference, and they just quote this pasuk and say, this is clearly like the Torah's approach to teaching, then just like laugh out loud, because like it's clearly not so simple, like it sounds really good, but it's needs a lot of work here. Okay, so let's do what we usually do. Oops. And take our minute of thinking, and then we'll do what we usually do also, and hear half answers and approaches first. Okay, so let's take our minute.
It could also be that no one's heard of this pasuk over here.
It could be. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just in and so I hear it a lot. But yeah, Did anyone have this as a yearbook quote? No, probably not. Okay, not a very yearbooky one. All right, let's go here. A minute. Okay, who has half answers or answers to particular questions or observations? And we'll start with those.
I have a half.
half answers. You go first.
Okay. I was just thinking about something that I learned in 9th grade about like remembering, like when you want to study something and you want to like use a good tip to remember it, you could like picture it or think about Amelia Bedelia with markers in her mouth in room 4.
Ooh, did you remember that from 9th grade?
Yeah,
Oh my
I can't
gosh,
I
man,
can't
I
forget it.
remember that.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Basically being like imagine something and picture it and it'll help you remember it more. So
Yeah.
I can't really fit it into the other questions, but I was just feeling that like it must, like, I don't know, the first thing that popped out to me was that like do it in some way memorable, because that would fit the second half of the pasuk of not forgetting it when you're old.
Okay, so this is an example of something that all right, so clearly you are answering you're answering what the derech is, and also what number 2 is what the goal is, because you're saying that what is going to stick with him the most. Okay, so that is a and you're saying his derech is something that is like, are you saying this as like a, what you want to try saying what you mean by derech, or
I guess I was thinking more about what I don't mean, like, because
okay.
I feel like this could very easily go into teach to somebody's level, and I was thinking like I feel like it could also not mean that, because we've seen that in a lot of other contexts and stuff, and like I just thought that not necessarily to his level, but in a way that he's not gonna stray from it as much.
Okay, I hear. Okay, yeah, because I was thinking that you meant by derech like, because you made recourse to the study skills lesson that I was giving in 9th grade, that it was like the human psyche, certain things have an impact on the human psyche, and like one of those things in many people is imagery, so I thought you were saying derech is like according to what's natural to a person.
I think that it could be, but like it depends on the person, like,
yeah, right. I mean, that could differ from person to person. Like there's some people who don't have visual visual minds. Yeah,
like what if Darko isn't something that we can generalize? Like what if
Right.
Darko has to inherently be personal?
Right, and that's why the pasuk would be saying Darko is like that specific kid,
Right.
or youth, what it is. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, anyone else have another half approach?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Ariel.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and define na'ar and zaken here.
Okay.
I think that I don't think it necessarily means like a child or an old guy. I think it just means you are a nar in a specific topic or a specific area of your life, or in let's say in a profession or in a course or in whatever it is.
Yeah.
And a zaken just means that you are now proficient in that area.
Okay.
Okay, that's how I'm defining.
So that would make sense, especially with the what do you call it? With oops, sorry, I was trying to mute someone and I accidentally asked them to unmute. So ignore that if that was you. Okay. What was I gonna say? That makes sense with the chinuch being inaugurate, right? Meaning that when you're introducing them to a new area, then you should use this strategy. But that doesn't mean that they're young. It just means that they're young in this area. Okay, I think that's good.
I have something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Ariel. Did you want to add to what you were saying?
I don't know if it's specific to inaugurate. I think it would also be to educate someone in the way I'm formulating it as well.
Right, but I'm saying I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is that, like, by definition, you're talking, according to you, the pasuk is talking about exposing someone to a new area, by definition, right? Because that's how you're defining nar.
Yeah, I think maybe it's like a combination approach of educating.
Yeah, right. It's in other words, it's talking about how to about early education or introductory education, and it could still continue. Meaning, it could be that it's saying that you should do this in a continuing way, but it's like it's talking about the beginning of the education process, not the, like you're not talking about someone who's in calculus B or in advanced Gemara.
For a zaken, I am, yeah.
Right, but not according to the first half of the pasuk, not chanoch.
I didn't get there yet. I was just trying to define nar and zaken, but I'm just open-minded between educate and inaugurate. I think it could go either way.
I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding you. I thought you were saying nar is someone who is new to the topic.
Yes, but yes, it is technically, it can be, as an inaugurated, but it's also you're educating him because he's new in that area as well.
Right. Okay.
I think what Zach said was good. I think the combination is key here because, I mean, okay, fine. I'm developing a theory, but can I just define one more thing before I finish? Yeah. I also want to define Darko in his way, meaning it's just his nature. You are educating him within his nature of him being able to do certain things that he is comfortable naturally doing.
Okay, so nature in the sense of things that that comes to him naturally. That's how you're using the word nature?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, all right. That gives us what to work with. Okay, so maybe what I would ask while we go to other people is think about an example of this.
I already have one, but I'll wait. Oh
no, why give an example now, because I want to lock this one in terms of getting it as an approach that we can say, okay, this is one approach.
Yeah, sure. It's a personal example, like from work. Okay. There was like I kind of have like a specific personality, a more assertive, aggressive personality, in terms of like.
I've never seen that. I'm just kidding.
You don't know me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there were certain things that I wanted to do that would just naturally fit within my nature.
Yeah.
Which probably would have yielded me more, success in what I was doing for my job. However, my manager has a different personality. He has a more, less assertive, aggressive personality, and he was kind of projecting his own, wisdom onto me that didn't necessarily fit me.
Right.
I couldn't excel in what I wanted to do. at the end of the day, like it kind of held me back. So I fired him. But at the end of the day, he's my productivity coach. So now my manager, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, wow, you really you really ascended the ranks pretty fast there. Yeah.
Whatever, manager, productivity coach. But at the end of the day, like it's just, each person has his own unique skills and his own unique, personality that you have to work with his own, abilities.
Okay. That's a good example. I want to return to that in a little while. So let me just hear what Sarah was going to say, and then when Mark has his hand up, and then. But I think that's
question.
Yeah.
Why do you put automatically the comma, but after according to his path? Why not? Can you read it as Chanoch Lanar al pi darko gam ki zaken lo yasar mimena? Can you break it up that way? That way.
Yeah, go ahead.
That way, because you're educating him according to his youth, or wait, can you go back to the screen for a second?
Sorry, I just want to actually look at the pasukim with the ta'amim to answer your question about why I'm breaking it up that way. Just give me 1 second here. I should open this earlier. 22.
That hand raising thing is really cool. How do you do it?
Someone can say, will I find this?
There's a reactions button on the bottom of the screen. You see there. Is that?
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on just a second. Avital, so let me answer your question, or let me see if I can answer your question based on this. Okay. So the way that the Ta'amim say it is Chanach Lanar al pi darko. So the asnafta is there. Gam ki yaskin lo. Yeah. So the comma, there is going to be a comma there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to check that. Okay. So Sarah was next, I think, right?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go back.
Sorry, can you go back to the page for a second?
I'll go back in a second. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Stop share. Share screen. Yeah. There we go.
Okay. So this is also like a half-baked approach, but I was just thinking about Mishlei in terms of like giving advice and then like seeing results, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was looking at this and I was thinking like, okay, let's say you would answer number 5 and you would say that it's according to his way, right? So I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking like educate a youth al pi darko. So then I was thinking about what's al pi darko, and I was realizing that even if the person's a na'ar, like his way could constantly be changing as he grows up. If you go with the idea of age, like what is his way? Like he might have it. You could argue that it's like his personality, but a person's ability to learn and what they learn like changes as they get older. So I was thinking that if it's talking to an educator, and I was thinking about something that you say that you do, like when you teach, like you see if it's not working for your students, you would like alter it, right?
Right.
So like according to their way. So I was thinking like maybe it's saying that if you are constantly like reevaluating what the na'ar's al pi darko is, like according to when he gets older, or like if it's not working for him, gam ki zaken, like that's why it matters to like that's why the na'ar connects to zaken, because then you're always doing it to the point that even when he's old, you've been educating him so well and like according to his way that when he's old, certainly he's not going to turn away from it because you've constantly been on top of it.
So
does that make sense?
It makes sense. This is a really interesting question here in terms of how we read the transition from the na'ar half to the zaken half, because in other words, one way to think of the pasuk is it's only talking about how you start him off. And let's just go with the extreme and say it's inaugurate. So let's say you have an elementary school teacher who does a really good job of following this pasuk, and then the teacher goes away. And what the pasuk is saying is even when they grow old, then they won't deviate from that elementary school teacher's education. That's one way. The other way is the way that it sounds like you're saying, Sarah, which is that at each step of the way, then the kid is growing and changing his derech, and the teacher is meeting the kid at each step. And if that keeps up, then then they won't deviate from it.
Wait, can I?
Yeah, because
Is that what you're just saying? So that's what you're saying, Sarah? That like you're meeting it? Okay, yeah, okay, good. And I think those are two legitimate ways to view it, but I just wanted to highlight that. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I really like that approach, because then it could be talking about, we asked like who the audience is, like obviously we know it's an educator, but I think in that case you can do a parent and a teacher, because then like, you have teachers when you're younger, and then when you're in high school, whatever, college, and they're likely only going to be with you for a certain amount of time, but your parents are going to be there, hopefully until Yeah, I don't know why I just made it morbid, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Okay, so let's go. I forgot. So let's go Mark and then Isaac and then Avi. If Mark is.
So I don't know if I'm adding any. I don't know if I'm adding anything at this point. Yeah. But I think that the structure, I mean, sort of like what everyone's piecing together. Whenever you introduce somebody into an area of knowledge, you basically have to take their personality into consideration. If you treat wisdom or like as a river, it's going to flow. If you try to deviate it or take it to a new canal, you're going to it's going to break. You're going to have flooding. So in a person's approach, you're going to create a certain sort of rebellion against your dictating. This is the way to learn. So say gam ki yazkin means as long as there's many ways. Any area of knowledge can be taught in a way that the person is suited, naturally or predisposed to learning. So when you're teaching them, as long as you take how they learn, and I think we're more sensitive to it now when we talk about people's special education. As a person they learn differently, you understand people with characteristics, have ways they learn. So as long as you're feeding within that, they will continue to learn, because if you're trying to break their personality, what happens is at a certain point, they're going to come back and say, well, all this is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And it was always, Rabbi Schneeweiss's approach, and it's not really the best approach.
Right. So I'm trying to get what you're definitely adding something. I'm just trying to see what the thing is that.
It sounds very similar to, it sounds like he's describing what happened to Ariel a bit.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to put my finger on is are you saying that I understand the idea of resistance to it, but I'm missing the connection between teaching according to the way of the youth and then the resistance. Can you just address that point one more time? Are you saying if you fail to teach according to his way? Or are you saying if you succeed?
Way,
go ahead.
No, if you fail. So I think that in learning, a lot of times you find people that they're going to say something, or the Rebbe gives us far, or somebody gives us far, but they don't listen to it because they're so insistent on giving it, in their,
right,
their habit. Oh, I have the best far, and they skip over someone else. So if you don't, teach, whatever it is, if it's automotive, it's math, science, whatever it is, according to the way this person is going to learn, then there's always that thing in the back of the head, and they're going to miss things. So they're going to. Yeah. It's not an active rebellion of I'm going to just reject the whole thing, but there's things that they're going to miss. And just
right.
To Ariel's, I think it's Ariel's example. I had the same thing once at work. I had an approach, and my manager had an approach, and we couldn't get past it. And it was a machlokas on a fact that we didn't even approach until our joint manager sat us down in a conference room and said, he's this and you're that, and you guys approach things differently, and just look what you're missing, go back to the basics and figure it out.
Right. Yeah. All right. That's a good point. Yeah. So that's kind of elaborating on Avital's question about what the opposite is. Is that if you if you're inflexible as the teacher, then that's not only is that not going to work, but it's going to breed a type of resistance or antagonism that's going to make them turned off to what you have to offer, even if what you have to offer is good. Okay, Isaac and then Avi, and then let's try to take this and develop one approach. Not to be inflexible. Yeah. Go ahead, Isaac.
I have a speculative approach. So I guess I'd say that this is half of the opposites, but it's the bad half.
Okay.
And it's that you're educating him in the way that he is already inclined to, and so he's going to become more set in it. And
okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, what I want to do is I want to quickly, this is touching on what Shifra said. Okay. This is what I was alluding to in Shifra's answer. I want to quickly show you the two Mefarshim who take that approach, but I don't want to dwell on that. It's a good approach, but I want to go back to the way we're doing it, and then I'll call on Avi afterwards. So I just want to show you really quickly. So I saw Shadal. Okay. And I'm just going to zoom in for a second here. Let me just change the layout because get a bigger font here. Okay. So Shadal says, Chanoch Lanar, ironia, kedas rabag. So I figured ironia probably means irony. So I looked it up and I saw that it does mean irony. And then check out what the Rabag says. Chanoch Lanar. So I think he says exactly what Isaac is saying. Asher yachanoch lanar al pi haderech asher minhago v'tivu lalechas ba. So if you train the youth according to his path, that is his custom and his nature to follow, lachashvo v'hi. I think this is a typo. No, you know what? I'm going to read someone else from the Rabag. Meiri says the Rabag's idea also, but he says it in cleaner language. He says, oh, here we go. There are some who say that this is by way of exaggeration. I think we did this once in a pasuk in our parak, that it was saying the opposite of the truth. Okay, so it's saying it in an ironic, exaggerating manner, and it's the opposite of the truth. The kavanasam l'shlilas einin, it's trying to dissuade you from something, v'lo l'chiyuva, not to obligate you in it. Okay, how so? V'amar chanoch lenar pidarko, klomar hargilehu lasos kfi tivo urtono. If you habituate him according to his nature and his will, v'lo tiyasrehu, and you don't discipline him, v'da ki im tase kain, if you do this, Gam ki beis hazikna lo yasar mimeno. Then even when he gets old, he's not going to deviate from it. Okay, and this is talking about like this type of parenting style where, like, I'm saying parenting style. I think it's more relevant in parenting than in teaching, although I think it could apply in teaching also. Is that if you basically say, I don't want to impose myself and impose anything like foreign onto the kid. I just want to teach them. I just want to let them do what they're naturally doing, and then it'll all work out. And what it's saying is if you accustom the kid to do that, then that's going to create firm bad habits that he won't be able to deviate from when he gets older, So that's treating it as an not exaggerate. I mean, we use guzma for exaggeration, but it's like sarcastic. It's a sarcastic pasuk, okay? It's saying, oh, yeah, sure, by all means, educate the kid according to his way. And then when he gets older, then he won't deviate from it. So I think is that like along the lines that you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Let's go with Avi, and then I want to go either to Mefarshim or develop Ariel's approach.
Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking about question 1.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to think that it's talking more about like the inauguration translation, where it's like, yeah, if you start them off good, then they won't turn from it. I feel like that's like a pretty big chiddush, whereas like if you're kind of with like this student or kid like their whole way, then I feel like it's fairly obvious that they probably won't turn away from your teachings.
I hear what you're saying. Okay, good. Yeah. I think that's another reason why I'm inclined to that translation of inaugurate, because it does sound like it's more specific and therefore there's more room for a chiddush. Yeah, okay, we'll return to that in a second. Zach?
So it is now a good time for like a more holistic theory, or?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
it's 9:00 p.m., the Zach Holistic Hour. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess the first thing that came to mind when I was reading this was the famous quote that is, I think, widely attributed to Albert Einstein, but I think is not confirmed. But if you teach a monkey to swim and a fish to climb a tree, they'll both grow up thinking they're a failure. Mm-hmm. And so I think that this is talking about a perhaps less or slightly different but very similar scenario. So I think educate in this sense, and I'll try to just define a bunch of the sections here of how I'm looking at it to try to answer as many of the questions as possible. But I think education here is starting off as a positive. So I think the opposite of this is if you just educate regularly. So it's a positive and it'll help them, but it won't have the same impact as if you educate them according to his way. And I think that the type of education I'm looking at is early education as opposed to any education. So I am looking at it as education, but I think the reason why he chose this word is to imply a type of education, not just any education. And I think that, for example, either it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked a bit about how, or at least I mentioned how when I was in school, I had a teacher who had a very specific assignment for me that changed how I wrote. And I think I've heard many people, if not everybody, can reference a story where a teacher had a big impact on them. And they're like, I remember my 2nd grade teacher, my 10th grade teacher, and I think that this pasuk is addressing teachers to help them be that teacher that kids remember. It's saying, if you want the education you're offering them to last to, when they're older and hopefully successful, and they think back and they say, oh, this was a piece of advice that helped me all the way through. The advice that will get to that level of that status is the advice that's specifically catered to them. It's like, you look at this student, you see where they're at, you see what roadblocks they have, and you address it to try to get them to the next step. And that'll help them, throughout their whole life. And I don't think it's a specific type of roadblock, meaning I think there's many different types of paths a person has. There's thinking, there's the 3 circle Simon Sinek circles, how, what, why, there's many different ways to think. And there's, I think, a lot of different paths that make up each person's educational process, audio, visual, kinesthetic. So if a teacher can identify what path the student needs and then answer and educate according to that path, their education is going to be the most long lasting.
Okay, good. I agree with that. And I think that that's going to serve. I would like to do the Mitzudas David's approach in a little while, but I think that also fits in with Ariel's approach. And so I'd like to keep your explanation in mind when we go through both of those in more detail. Isaac, is that a leftover hand raised from before, or is that a new one?
Leftover.
Can I
Okay, yeah.
Can I add a few things onto my approach?
Yeah. And then I want to do the Mitzudas David because I don't want to keep people over time. Obviously we can continue discussing this, but yeah.
Yeah. So I also want to answer whether or not if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Okay.
To have this, and if it's true, if it changes as well. So the more I'm thinking about it, it can be either very good for the individual being trained, or terrible. Meaning, depending on the educator, he can easily manipulate the let's say just the student for a second, in either for good or for bad, just lack of better terms, because he's kind of in control and how to basically dictate this individual's lifestyle. So I guess if someone really knows his derech, his nature,
yeah,
he can really take advantage of that and manipulate him into doing something very evil, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
I don't think this pasuk is coming to tell you whether this is good or bad. It's just coming to teach you what the best way to educate an individual is.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is that this is not taking a stance on number 2, on what meaning. If you're Hitler and you're training Nazi youth, you can use this to succeed in something that's actually bad because you're training according to their nature.
Exactly. Meaning, this is just a reality of how to teach people. Whether you do for good or for bad, that's.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good answer. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And that's why I did not want to completely get rid of the idea that the audience can also be for the student, because there has to be. I just feel like that if the student can be aware of this situation, and if he really understands himself, he can this might be an application. So
yeah, that's I think that's exactly what I was about to say, which is that 100% is an application, but the audience is not the student, you know. But I agree with your sentiment though, is that, you know, if you are a you know, let's say you're being taken into a cult, you know, you should know this, and like you should realize that cult leaders are very good at like manipulating people's derech, and then like, you know, and you should get out. But that's not what the pasuk is addressed to. Yeah.
Right. And I also want to answer the gam. I think that the gam is a maybe, I guess, to answer, I don't know who asked this question. I think it might have been, I forgot, whatever. I forgot to answer the question. But if he won't turn away from it, like, what is that it? Yeah. I think it could be his derech.
Yeah.
You know, because like you can't really change your derech. You'll just recognize your derech, and you'll be able to apply other tools within your derech, within your nature.
Right. So I think that
you'll never forget that.
I think that's going to depend on whether we say derech is like your nature, in the way, like your style, you know, like you were saying, like you're, you know, aggressive and assertive, or whether derech is like that's how you're at that stage of education. You know, I think that'll you know, because if you're going to say it's your nature, then you're right. Like at a certain point, your person, like the core of your personality is like fixed, and you could work with that or you could not work with that, but it's there no matter what. So I think that for that approach, then it referring to the derech makes sense. If derech is like some other people want to say that your derech is that developmental level, then that is going to change from stage to stage.
Right. I just want to say one more thing, and then I'll.
Okay,
I'll
and then I want to go to the Mitzudas.
Okay.
I just want to keep on track here. Yeah.
I forgot who told me this, and this might be a side point, but someone told me that when you're young, your mind kind of, you know, is still forming. So you can still develop different approaches, you know, to either derech halimud or to your lifestyle or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have more flexibility in changing. But when you get older, you're kind of fixed. You know, because you're so used to a certain lifestyle, you're just gonna stick with it, and you're gonna be very stubborn in changing that.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that fits in at the moment, but I'm just gonna throw that out there, and like if we can
I'll tell you, Rabbeinu Yonah does say that, and we might not have time to go to Rabbeinu Yonah tonight, but he gives the analogy of a tree that when, I think this is a well-known analogy, but like when a tree is young and is growing, let's say you want it to, you know, grow in a certain direction, you can like, I mean, you see this all the time, you know, well, not that there are many trees in New York, but like, you know, you can like influence its growth in a certain way, and it'll grow in that direction. But if the tree is grown to be mature, good luck like trying to change the way that it grows, you know? So with a human being also, like there's a certain point at which you can influence its development in many different ways, but then the older you get, the more set in your ways that you become. And it's not to say that you can't change, it's just to say that it's going to be very, very hard. Okay, so here's the plan now. I want to show you just one simple idea from the Metzudas David, and then I want to show you the application to what we started off with, and then I want to summarize, and then we'll officially end this year, and then we'll talk like we usually do until we're done talking, okay? And people could go. All right, so Metzudas David, just because I feel like maybe I never said this explicitly, okay? Metzudas ציון and Metzudas David are the same person, okay? For those who don't know that. It's actually the same people because it's a father and son duo that the father started writing the commentary, and then he died, not to get morbid, Rivki, but and then the son finished it. But Metzudas ציון is the dictionary component, and the Metzudas David is the commentary component. So the same one who says, so this is the one who says inaugurate. Okay, so we're going with inaugurate here. So this is what he says. Metzudas David. He says, hold on. Yeah, okay. So he says, Haschel v'hargil es ha'na'ar b'shanim. So you should initiate and accustom the youth in years. So he says it's a youth in terms of age. Laholicho ba'avodas Hashem, to guide him in service of God. So again, that's also contextualizing it, that he's talking about service of God, which we presume means Torah and Mitzvos, okay? Because he learns that the book is about Torah and Mitzvos primarily. Lefi derech chachmaso. Here's the key point. According to the way of his wisdom. So that's how he's learning according to his way. Im ma'at v'im harbeh. Whether it's a little or whether it's a lot. Ukesheyihi murgol ba'avodas Hashem. And once he becomes accustomed in service of God, gam ki yazkin, then also when he grows older, lo yasur mimena, he will not deviate from it. Ki yitain lev lahaskil kishron hamaseh hahi, because he will apply his mind to conceptualize the perfection of that action. Okay, and you know what? Because that was so complicated, let me just type it out in English, okay? Because I want us to figure out what he means here. Okay, so he says, initiate and accustom the youth in years to guide him in service, in service of God, in accordance with the way of his wisdom, whether a little or a lot. And when he is accustomed in service of God, then even when he grows old, he will not deviate from it, because he will apply his mind to comprehend or conceptualize, depending on what translation you want to use, the perfection, or I think perfection is the best word of kishron here, of that action. Okay, so the question is, first of all, let's just stop and marvel. This is why I love the Mitzudas David, because he says a lot in very few words. Okay, so what is his idea? What is his explanation of the pasuk here? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I mean, it seems like he's trying to say that he's trying to sum up like the Jewish education system. He's trying to say, like, if you want to raise kids and students to be Jewish adults who follow in the way of God, then this is how you do it.
Right. So what is he saying though? How does it work according to him?
According to the level of wisdom.
So what does that mean? How does that work? I think he's saying something much more subtle than that.
Is he saying use the student's nature to serve God in a like?
So that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I don't think that's what he's saying, because he's putting the focus on the level of chachma, the level of wisdom, not like harnessing their nature or redirecting their nature or anything like that. I mean, there are mafarshim who learn it that way though, and that's great, but that's not what he's saying.
I was gonna say that I feel like the emphasis he's putting on is like whether a little or a lot, because I feel like a lot of the time you just think like, as an educator, you think, okay, like I'm gonna, load my students up, whether it's like a student or like a child, with like all the information I have on this topic.
Yeah.
And like you don't really think about, it's bad, but sometimes you don't think about what the repercussions of that would be, and if that person is even at that point where they'll be able to accept it, and it could actually be damaging.
Okay, so that's definitely part of what he's saying, okay? But if you'll notice, he's putting the emphasis on two things, okay? He's putting the emphasis on according to the student's level of chachma, whether a lot or a little, but he's also saying in order to accustom him in the service of God, so that when he gets old, he will be able to apply his mind to conceptualize the perfection of that action. So there's something subtle here. So this is my understanding of what he's saying here, okay? Which is like this. There are lots of ways to get someone into a habit. Okay, like you can just, if you force a kid to daven or whatever, he'll get into that habit. But that habit is not necessarily going to stick. Okay, so what he's saying is like this: he's saying what you have to do is you have to take each individual kid, all right, and he is saying kid, he's saying young in years, and you have to assess what level of understanding do they have, and you have to conceptualize it in their mind and establish the habit based on their understanding, okay, in a way that actually is meaningful to them on their level of understanding, not on the highest level necessarily, not in those, like you're saying, Rivki, not just like overload them with information, okay, but if you succeed in doing that, so then they will stick to the habit, and then the habit can grow with their mind, and with each level that they develop, they'll be able to understand the perfection in that action according to their development of their mind. Okay, now if that doesn't make sense, the example of this is what we started off with. Okay, so let's just really quickly look at the four sons here. Okay, so again, we've been through this enough that I'm not going to read through every single word here, but you have the wise son, and basically how do you educate him? You teach him in depth the halachos of, even the halachos of the Korban Pesach. Okay, these very, very in-depth halachos. Okay, the wicked son, you basically provoke him. That's that you blunt his teeth, and you say that if you had been there, you wouldn't have been redeemed. Okay, the simple son, you give him a simple answer. God took us out of Egypt, and then the son who doesn't know to ask, you start the conversation. Okay, so here's a thought experiment that I have never done before. Okay, and maybe none of you have done this either. Imagine what happens if you used the wise son's approach for all of the sons, or the wicked son's approach for all of the sons, or the simple son's approach for all the sons, or the son who doesn't know to ask's approach for all the other sons. So what's going to happen? So I think this wise son's approach, I think a lot of you can sympathize with this, okay, is there are a lot of people who their entire Jewish education consists of sitting in a classroom and their teacher just overloads them with dry, detailed halacha, okay, that they're not capable of or they're not interested in, that has no meaning in terms of what they actually care about. Okay, so what happens is you get a few kids who really are into Gemara thinking, and like it works for them, and like they find meaning in it and they find it stimulating. Then you have the other kids who they're not being given any like way of thinking about the mitzvos that actually has anything to do with their life, so they don't form the habit and the attachment to the mitzvos, and it doesn't develop. Because if you don't establish the habit of being attached to the actions or the lifestyle, then you're not going to continue learning about it when you grow up. Okay, so that's if you tried the Chacham. Now, the Chacham's approach is the best approach, meaning like to go into all the details ultimately is going to be the highest level of learning. But if the kid's mind is not interested in that or set for that or capable of that, it's going to be disastrous. Okay, take the Russia's approach now also. Okay, so this is a provocative approach, and I feel like I've had enough students who I feel like teachers do this also. This is what Rabbi Moskowitz, my Mishlei Rebbe, would call the fire and brimstone method. Okay, if you do this, if you violate this, then you're gonna burn in Gehenna, or you're gonna lose your chelik in Olam Haba, or it's the fear tactics method, right? And what happens is you get, I've seen this damage done as a high school teacher. I have so many students who like had really good minds, in like middle school, who have good minds now, but like they had good minds in elementary and middle school, but their teacher just like scared them into some perverted way of thinking about God and reward and punishment. And it like traumatized them to the point where they're not looking at mitzvos as things that are like meaningful to me, or that I can understand and like satisfy my curiosity and ask questions about. I mean, that's really where it kills them, when like they have questions about it, that they are seeking meaning from the mitzvahs, and instead all they get is like, don't ask questions because you're an apikoros, like you're a heretic, like it's just a very, very like dissuasive, fear-mongering type way of thinking. Now, again, why we respond to the wicked son in this way is a good question. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just saying like, if you use this on the wrong kid, then it's very bad. Simple son, again, this is another thing I've seen very many examples of, is you have kids who are asking real complex questions or challenging questions that are seeking real meaning, and they just get a simplistic answer that is like a 5th grade thing when they're asking like an 11th grade question, and like that is not satisfying to them. And then this other, the son who doesn't know to ask, so if you look at the way that we do this, you initiate a conversation. This is essentially a one-way thing, right? It's a one-way conversation. Is he's not saying anything, and the parent or the teacher is just like starting to talk to him. I've seen a lot of people like this also, where the entire process of education is someone lecturing, and there's no feedback from the student, and nothing that they say is really being like addressed, and therefore they think that that's what learning is that you just like, it's just a purely passive receptacle, and like you're not supposed to like engage, So again, I'm applying this to the you might say that this is not what the Mitzvos is talking about, but I think that it is a good example of it. Is that what he's saying is our goal on the Seder night is to get the kids attached to the mitzvos and to the story and to thinking about stuff. but you have to do it on their level, and you have to do it in a way where it will, where their mind will conceptualize it and see the perfection of the action on that level. If you succeed in doing that, then each level that the kid grows in and develops in, he will continue to seek meaning according to his level of chachma at that point. But if you attempt to force an approach that is not developmentally appropriate, or if it's just what the teacher wants, so then you're not giving him something that he can continue to grow with. And you might succeed in establishing a habit that will last, let's say, through his high school years, or through like while he's in his parents' home and his parents like are there. But it's not going to last because he was never trained to seek meaning and conceptual understanding based on his own level. And that's really what the Metzudas David's like emphasis is you're essentially, the best education is where you train the kid to follow his mind on his level, whatever that level is. And if you train him to follow their mind on that level, you're instilling the habit of following your mind and pursuing it on every level, and then that'll stick with you when you go on. So that's my understanding.
Can I say something really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
It's just like I had this realization just like a few days ago, and like this is so applicable that I'm noticing like more and more is like, my friends and I, like we grow up, that the ones who were raised in homes where it was never like taught to them why mitzvos are a good thing or why avodas Hashem is a good thing. Now they're not interested at all, even though they went through the yeshiva system.
Yeah.
So this is just so true.
Good. So that's a good point. And I think that I bet if you found a lot of those kids, I bet you would find that they didn't deviate from it for a certain period of time, but so it has the illusion of it working, but when they get old, it's not going to happen. Like it wasn't enough to sustain them when they get old. They're just like, and if they do sustain when they get old, it's just a dry husk of like inertia,
or even like a burden at some point,
or
if they don't understand it.
Yeah, right. And again, that's the I mean, not to get into this whole thing, but that's the in the Talmud Yerushalmi, that's the version of the Wicked Son's question of why are you burdening us with all of these mitzvos and interrupting and delaying our meal, like I basically have to like get through this in order to get to the meal, which is the part that I really want, yeah.
Question before I get to a suggestion is,
sure.
When you were applying that to the 4 sons, is how do those answers result in formulating habits?
Yeah. So that's something which I'm not equipped to go into right now. We could talk about it later on. But part of that's the question of like how much are we supposed to read into these things anyway? I was just walking in with the premise that, and this is a premise I'm walking in with based on my understanding of what we do on the night of Pesach, is we are trying to inaugurate the next generation into the mitzvah system, and into getting attached to the mitzvos and the heritage and Yetzias Mitzrayim, the whole Exodus thing. So I was walking in with that premise, but I was not explaining how the particular answers establish that.
Okay, then I have a suggestion, but I don't know if I should wait till we're in the after.
Yeah, sure. Let's wait, hold off on it for just 1 second. I just wanted to make one more point also, and then let's officially end the shiur, and then people want to stick around and talk, then we could talk. You know who else does this really well? Shlomo HaMelech, right? We've pointed this out a lot, is that even though each pasuk in Mishlei is for specific audiences, he wrote the pasuk to be for the Pesi, the naive simpleton, and the Na'ar, and the youth, and the Chacham, and the Navon. He's trying to have, and we've talked about this in recent weeks with the Chidushim, is that he's trying to give you ideas that are, or to write Mishlei in a way where it's relevant at every point in your development. And when you're starting off, you get the basic idea, and then when you go on, you can learn it on a more sophisticated level, and on and on and on. And that attaches you to Mishlei as a lifestyle, to the Mishlei life, and keeps you with those habits. So he's definitely good at that also. Okay, so just to summarize, and then we'll officially end for tonight, and then we'll have the after party like we always do. So according to Metzudas David, then the idea is initiate the youth according to his way, which means find a way to present this to him that he can conceptualize on his level of mind that attaches him to the habit that you're trying to instill. Now, in this case, it's avodas Hashem. But by the way, I think this is not just avodas Hashem. This could be in any form of education. I mean, I think, whether you're doing this for like work habits or like a sport, or, it has to be on their level. And then what you're doing is you're training him to to relate to this as a meaningful action that he can understand and he could actually tap meaning into. I'm giving an analogy of this, right? Is that, and I've used this in different cases. I don't know how many of you have seen The Karate Kid, okay, classic movie. But in the original, you have the wax on, wax off, and basically Mr. Miyagi, Daniel wants Mr. Miyagi to teach him karate, right? So Mr. Miyagi says, okay, I'll teach you karate. And then basically he makes Daniel do all these chores of like waxing on, waxing off, sanding the floor, painting the fence. And he just forces him to do all these actions. And then finally one day, Daniel gets mad and he says like, I hired you, not I hired you. I wanted you to get me to teach me karate. And like, all you're doing is having me like be a slave to your stuff. And then Mr. Miyagi basically says, show me wax on, wax off. So Daniel goes like this, and Mr. Miyagi throws a punch, and Daniel realizes that he was really teaching him the motions of the karate, of karate the whole time. And like, he shows him that really the whole time he was training him in karate. And there's this click where he was doing these mindless actions. And then finally, this one moment, it instilled all the actions with meaning and empowerment. And he was like, oh, now I get what it was that I was doing. And that's, I think, the mistake that people make when they train their kids to do mitzvos is not a lot of people. I mean, I'm not saying what percentages, but like that you got to train the kid so that it's not a mindless action. It's something that they see value in on their level of understanding. Then they become attached to the action, and you train them to seek real value and benefit in what they're doing. And then that grows with them as they get older. They keep the habit and they keep the investigation. And since the mitzvos are inherently beneficial, they will see benefit as they go through, in every age.
What I really liked about that, sorry, one little point is what I really like about that example is that we can easily imagine that if Mr. Miyagi never told him, oh, let me throw you the punch, like let's say he never said anything, how long would he continue waxing that car, right?
He would quit. I mean, he would quit in most cases. And if he didn't quit, like there's a certain point where like, I don't know, I feel like there's a point of no return. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, okay, so I'm just thinking in terms of like really young, like when you're like starting your kids off type of thing, even up until they're like old enough to grasp the concept of what it means to serve God. Like, I feel like in that case, how much can you really teach other than attaching it to like a feeling, like making mitzvahs exciting?
No, so that's what you do is you teach it to a feeling. I gotta point out, I saw an amusing example of this. So one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Zucker, who was a high school teacher for like all the time that I knew him, but now he's an elementary school teacher. I saw a video from he's an elementary school principal. I saw a video from his school, and he's having the kids do a mock going to the Mikdash and bringing a Korban Pesach. Okay, which I feel like is not usually the thing that they do in elementary schools, but like they've got all the costumes and they have like songs and they have like their like props and stuff. And yeah, with a really young kid, then that's what you do. And and like this is something also that, again, like I didn't have a Jewish elementary school experience, but you guys know this. Songs like somehow stick in kids' heads, and like they know the whole thing, and like they become attached to it, or just positive experiences, and so yeah, you got to do it in a very, very feeling based way. When the kid is not cognitively developed, and then you scale up as they grow.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
So I was like, that's kind of how I was taking it before, like with chinuch. Like I was thinking of as like an update it, because if you don't update something, like if you start off, like each kid does have to go, and with the little kids you have to do the song, but if you don't update it, then you turn around and you still have that first grade level, and you look at it and you're like, this is ridiculous. Like why would I ever keep following this?
Right. So I use that analogy whenever I do my ninth grade tefillah class, and I have to like teach the kids, for the first time that God doesn't have emotions, and a lot of them are traumatized. So the analogy I give that example, but I give a slightly different thing. I say, on your phone, you have certain things that are automatic updates and certain things that you have to like manually like give permissions, and I say that what happens is your first grade teachers kind of assume that the program is on automatic, and that they pass you on to your next teacher, and then they assume it's on automatic, and they pass you on to your next teacher. And what happens is like some of the stuff updates automatically, but some of the stuff needed a manual update, and it didn't get it. So you end up in ninth grade with a second grader's understanding of God. And it's not your fault. It's your teacher's fault for not updating you as you went along. But like it is unfortunate. And then it's a shock to the system. That's not how God likes to do things, to shock to the system. So it's unfortunate. Okay, let's
I think that turns people off.
officially end shiur, and then so official end of shiur, and have a good Pesach, everyone, and now we can stick around talking about the idea as long as we want to, as we usually do.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I teach my kids the song "God is not here, God is not there" every night before bed.
Yeah, that also has to be done delicately. Yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely true what you're saying. You know, my girls just got their seder in first grade. You know, they build up to it. You know, you have a special cover. You put your name on it. You know, everything is the emotions to it. You know, they daven. There's, you know, who's going to be the chazanit for the day. Everything builds up the emotion, so they do develop that attachment to it.
I learned that they teach. They used to teach kids Vayikra first before Bereshit, and we were trying to figure out the logic behind that.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's not the easiest one to relate to. Yeah,
right.
I don't know. That's very interesting.
One of the ideas was that to show that
Parshas Kedoshim, there's a lot there, but not korbanos. That's very hard to understand.
We were my son was telling me that when he heard is that they want to teach the kids that it's that, you know, just this is the way that we conform to what, you know, to God, to the Torah. Not, we don't have like the Torah conform to us. But I don't know. I think it's questionable. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and look, here's the other thing also is that there are changing cultural realities. Like, look, the method of teaching kids, you know, high school boys Gemara, like, worked in Europe. Okay, I mean, I think it worked in Europe. I don't even know if it worked in Europe, but I don't think it's working now the same way that it that it was originally worked. Like, things can definitely change, and maybe the culture was such that that it was different. Yeah.
I mean, also they had the Mikdash. They were more concerned with Toma Tahara.
Right, that's true. I mean, that's actually a good example, right? Is if let's say you're in a society without professional sports, okay, and I went and I described how obsessed kids are with like the stats and like the games and stuff like that, you would think it's just as dry as korbanos. I think that like it's just like information that is just raw numbers and who cares, you know? But because they have this emotional attachment to it, then it infuses all the details with meaning. So perhaps there was a culture where that's how they related to the Beis HaMikdash, you know, that it was like this, you know, it was this central thing that the culture revolved around, and like it was exciting for that reason, you know.
I was gonna say, okay, I had a question.
Yeah.
So what would you say if you are encountering people that are on that like high school level and they never got to that point just because like they, you know, weren't taught that? So would you say that like, because I feel like you can't start at that basic, let's say like tefillah as an example, you can't start with that basic elementary teaching. So where do you feel like it's very hard because they don't have the basics?
So what you're going to have to do is you're going to still have to implement this this advice of Chanach Lana RLP Darko, but their derech is stunted. You know, like they have an intellectual level that's higher than that of a kid, but their ideas are that of a kid. And the psyche sometimes is ready for the upper idea, for the higher idea, but sometimes is attached to the lower idea. And it's a delicate process. Like I you know, once said to a Shalhavet class, like, I feel like I'm playing Jenga with your soul, you know, like, you know, if I remove, like, you know, I have to remove like the distorted false ideas, but I don't necessarily know what the entire structural integrity is like being held up with. So it is a very, very delicate process. But the advice of Chanach Lana RLP Darko is still like good. It's just much harder to do because they're a complex mix of like, you know, kid and like mature person, you know.
That analogy of playing Jenga with the soul sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it is. I'm terrified I'm going to make a mistake, like, you know, and like, but that's the thing, is just as a side point, just to, you know, have a therapy session with me right now. I mean, but it's not just me. It's like, you know, Rick, you're teaching people, like Sarah is teaching people, you know, there are people who, you know, who have been involved in teaching, like, you know, there's always a fear you're going to make a mistake. But I don't know if I ever told you what my, one of my best friends who is also in chinuch told me once when I was feeling really down about like how bad of a job I was doing. He said, and maybe you can't say this about everyone, but like he said this for me, maybe people better. He said, just think of if you took a random other educator and put them in your spot, how much more damage they would be doing than what you're doing, and like it made me feel better of like, it's possible I'll make mistakes, but like I'm not totally destroying them, so yeah.
I think Rebbe once said that kids will thrive in spite of your parenting.
Yes, yeah, and that's so my Rebbe said that about parenting.
You actually have a source from this pasuk we did this week, because it kind of is saying like when they get older, like meaning they'll get to a certain place, and it's just a matter of whether what you said will be part of where they got to or not.
Right. Yeah, unless you do too good of a job, like Ariel was saying about like programming them for which is another form of traumatizing. But I was gonna say my Rosh Yeshiva said that in terms of parenting. And when I asked Rabbi Zucker, who I mentioned, who's now an elementary school teacher, one time I thought I messed up a kid in terms of like I exposed them to an idea that they weren't ready for yet. And so Rabbi Zucker said students are very resilient, and it's hard to like cause permanent damage in like one lesson, even though it's possible. And then my Chumash Rebbe, Rabbi Sachs, said, he didn't say it in these terms, but he said basically like it's a mistake that some teachers are prone to, that they get so caught up in thinking about how influential they are, they don't realize that they're not as influential as they think, so like that's another thing to like remember that to mitigate things. So yeah, things could go wrong, but like not necessarily as bad as you fear.
So maybe I'll take this chance to so I had a suggestion that I think might also answer the question.
Here, let me go back to the psukim or the pasuk. Yeah. Oh, are you on mute again?
Yeah, sorry. Was it called the Mitzudas, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, so can we take a look at that for a second? So I had a suggestion that might help answer the question that I asked before about how do we sort of take your suggestion of applying this to the 4 sons and turning the answers into helping them habitualize a certain behavior.
Yeah.
So the suggestion is, rather than looking at the way of his wisdom as a level of intelligence,
yeah,
could we perhaps look at the way of his wisdom as not inherently a level of intelligence, but a way he's thinking or processing information?
Okay.
And so if we look at it like that, and then if we can go to the 4 sons maybe for a second. So if we look at it like that, then there's different types of students, and they're not necessarily like, according to this way of thinking, a wise son isn't inherently more intelligent than the evil, and the evil isn't inherently worse. None of them are more or less intelligent. They're just approaching things differently.
Right.
And so, for example, so just to randomly start with the evil son, is sometimes to get so first I'll start with the habit we're trying to habitualize. So I think the habit we're trying to habitualize for all 4 sons is to enter a discourse and to enter a discussion about Pesach. And so for one type of child, the way to do it is to, so to speak, create an argument.
Yeah.
Meaning that's just a way of thinking. And I think, I've had this experience with Rabbi Che, the one I know, which is I think Shifra's uncle, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was more common with other teachers, but there was sort of like a badge of honor if you could get into like a real like argument, like if he got mad at you, that was like, wow, like you did great, like it was not negative at all. It was just like, you did great. If he yelled at you, the best, like, So I think that's just one form of engagement. And another form of engagement is to literally just give facts and figures. It's like, here's the things. And a third form, like the simple one, is like, storytelling, here's what happened, here's, the story, and I forgot to look at the
last one is the conversation.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was the I meant that one. That was the one telling a story. Anyway, I could he asks, what is this? And he answered, with a strong hand, God took you out from Mitzrayim. So I'm not sure. I'd have to think about what the difference is between 3 and 4. But I guess to the suggestion I'm making and how it helps here is that rather than looking at it as levels of intelligence, is ways of thinking and ways of engaging, and using those ways to match this child will help them actually habitualize the engagement and interacting, rather than just being like forced to like sit through seder and like.
I think that's actually really good. And I actually, when I taught this in my Rambam shiur, I did make the point that the way the Rambam says in the halacha, lefi da'ato shel ben avi melamdo, and das is often translated as in like knowledge, but the way that the Rambam uses it, and I have countless proofs of this, is mind, the way we use the word mind in English, which is a combination of intelligence and psyche, like peace of mind, we would say, is not, peace of mind does not mean peace of intellect. It means like your entire state of mind, which includes your personality and stuff. Or like in the halachos of the seder also, like he says, like you should, there's tons of examples of this, but I think if it's what you're saying, Zach, about the overall way of engaging and processing information, not just like the level of intelligence, not like IQ. Yeah.
If I can add something, I was reading the Brisker Haggadah over the past couple of weeks. So on the Russia, so he basically takes the approach of it's not as adversarial as it's in my opinion as it seems. It's you breaking down his false premise. The Brisker Rav says or whichever in the Agada essentially says the question is or the response of Bavor Zeh Shemli is Bavor Zeh, meaning the mitzvah itself preceded the reason. So the approach of essentially like the reformer that the mitzvahs maybe were good, maybe had reasons at the time, but no longer apply. And so he's saying here, Bavor Zeh, it's not that we eat matzah because God took us out and we didn't have time. It's because we ate matzah and the Korban Pesach and all these things, therefore God took us out, and it raised us to a certain level. So it undermines his premise that caused
a great approach.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's very good. Yeah.
I just noticed, by the way, Ariel, Rashi says what you said in terms of check this out. Chanach lanar arpi darko, lefima shetilmad lanar utachanachehu b'devarim. So according to what you teach the youth and train him, im latov im lara, whether for good or for bad, gam ki askin lo yoser mimeno. Even when he gets old, he will not deviate from it. So he's acknowledging that you could do this for bad also.
Yeah.
Yes.
I posted a question via direct message. I don't know if it's live, but
oh yeah, I can't see messages during the thing. Let me look at it, or you could just say it.
I was wondering.
You could just say it.
If Shlomo Melech understood the key to raising a child to keep avodas Hashem in their old age, then how do we explain the fact that his son Rechavam was not exactly a paradigm of good Jewish education, and that some of his other disciples like Yeravam was supposed to have learned with him as well, and both of them were engaged in bringing people to avodah zarah and stuff like that?
Right. So there's the general answer, and then there's the specific answer. So the general answer, and this is the answer Rabbi Moskowitz gives to the question of how could Abraham have a Yishmael? How can Yitzchak have an Esav? Or however you want to say all these many examples of this, is that if you raise your kid to be a sheep, so then they'll be a good, you could raise them to be a good sheep. But if you raise your kid to have free will, which is what the Torah's goal is, part of having free will is that you might choose badly. And that's not a reflection on the parent, meaning that it's a success that the parent was able to raise a kid who could make a free will decision. And the Rishayim in the Torah are not fools. The Rishayim in the Torah are people who are making free will decisions. And there's a certain level to be a Rasha, you know? So that's the general answer. And I'm not saying that's the case in all of these cases. Like there are clearly cases where like, you know, it was mistaken parenting. Like, let's say like, you know, it seems clear that Yaakov had a problem when it came to raising Yosef, you know, that he showed favoritism and he was blind to like how the sibling rivalry would play out, et cetera, you know? But like, there are cases where you do everything perfectly, and because of that, then your kid has free will, and the free will leads him to take his own path, and he chooses poorly, and it's not a reflection on the parent. The specific answer, you have to look in each specific case. For example, with Rechavam, and again, I haven't done an analysis of his entire personality. Rechavam, the mistake that he made was that he listened to his advisors rather than his father's advisors, and he caved to political pressure. That's what led to the entire breakdown of stuff, you know? And it was the fact that God unleashed, because of Shlomo's sins, God unleashed the enemies that he had been holding back in order to dissolve the kingship. So you had that going against him. And the other thing also is, I don't remember who Rechavam's mother was. Shlomo had a lot of wives, and he was also very busy. I don't know how much parenting Shlomo HaMelech was able to do with each of his kids, you know? And you speak about Yeravam. Yeravam was a tzaddik to the point where God, and I was just going over this week, because this is the tragedy of Yeravam. God told Yeravam when he split the Malchus, he says, if you follow in my ways, I will create a dynasty for you that is equal to the dynasty of David HaMelech, and you will rule side by side with him for the rest of time. And God said that to him. And what did he do? He built 2 golden calves. Okay. And like, you have to understand why he did that and stuff. But like, you know, God apparently thought that he was worthy of this. So it's not just like a mistake there, you know? So, and I'm not saying this to dismiss your question. I'm saying that to really answer according to the specifics, you really have to do a character study of each one according, you know, with all of the pasukim and all of the context. So that's my answer.
And maybe another way of saying sort of what you were saying first is that the role of a parent is to provide good education, not to take away free will. So someone exercising free will doesn't negate the fact that they received a good education.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And also you got to remember that the way that, you know, in the Torah's paradigm, you know, real parenting ends with bar mitzvah, you know, and like at that point, not that the parent like just says see ya, but like the parent is now in the role of a mentor or a guide or someone to come to advice, but not like the way that parenting now lasts into your teenage years, into your like young adulthood, sometimes even into your 30s, you know, that's not the way the Torah envisions it. Yeah.
I just have a quick question in terms of
Sure.
application. So I really just need to know, like, if I'm trying to strip this idea and it just doesn't belong here.
Okay.
So would you say like the classic idea of when someone is asking you a question, like specifically a kid, that you should really be listening to like what they're actually asking and not just like the basic level of what they're asking, or is this just like a different idea?
Yeah, is that there's that you have to oh man, hold on just one second. I know I've tried looking for this cartoon before.
I feel like I totally stole that from you, like for my NTSY education.
There's I'm just looking in the folder, and if I can't find it immediately, then I'll just summarize it. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is a Peanuts cartoon. And I think of this a lot in high school. So hold on, let me share the screen. Do you think life has any meaning? Well, I mean, do you think life has any meaning after you failed 9 spelling tests in a row and your teacher hates you? That's a different question. You know, so the point of it, and I've experienced this all the time, is there will be a student who asks a question, and there's the content of the question, there's the intellectual question, and there's the psychological question. Sometimes those are in line, sometimes they are completely out of line. Like the teacher will be, the student will ask a question of like, why do good things happen to bad people? And really it's that their grandma is sick with cancer and dying, you know? And like, or why do good things happen to bad people? And the student is like looking for an excuse to like reject the entire metaphysics of Judaism as like absurd, or they're asking the question, like actually asking the question, you know? So yeah, you have to really listen, and it's hard if you don't know the student. And that's why I I was at such a tremendous advantage that I got to teach all of you for 4 years in like 10 classes, because I felt like with each class that went by, I got to know not only your minds, but your personalities and your like developmental track more, and be able to like listen better to your questions. And then that resulted in better learning for you, which resulted in like better teaching for me. And like, it was like a positive feedback loop, you know? But like, if you don't know the kid very well, then it is much harder to like, to pinpoint that. But yeah, you should listen. And sometimes you misdiagnose it, you know, you answer like the content of their question and really emotionally you're not hitting it, and like you just do the best you can. But yeah, you're correct. Okay, I actually do have to go, unfortunately, because I have to do Badika before I leave for New York tomorrow. And I don't know how long that's going to take, but if you have questions, feel free to let me know. And I also want to say, I meant to say this while everyone was still on. You know, my high school students know this, but like, if you have questions over about Pesach stuff, like in this week, email them to me. Not halakha questions, like I'm not pausing for you, but like you know, Haggadah questions or stuff, because that's what really gets me into the preparation mode. So like, feel free to email me, and I'll try to answer them. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
See you in a couple weeks. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.